G'day punters, welcome back to the Punters Academy. Today we'll be reviewing the Rosehill meeting from Saturday. Good morning, John Walter.
Is it morning? I feel like I've been up for 6 days or something with the British Open, but good result for Australia. But fresh. Oh, it was a great meeting on Saturday. Can't wait to talk about it.
A lot to talk about, certainly, and in terms of off-season, I thought it was a pretty good meeting. Look, at the official track condition was an 8. We're saying that on the shoot races was more like a slow 7.2, and on the course proper races, which was races 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, we're saying it was better than that. It was probably just into the 6 range. So, but you know,
I know you don't have lanes yet, but it was a bit. It does look like there were lanes. Sort of looking at it a bit more closely, sort of through the middle, maybe was the place in the straight. For
sure, and the inside, and not to be, I suppose, not that surprising given the rail going back into true. So, you know,
but definitely like wide looked like maybe it was a tougher place to be than sort of maybe, I don't know, so I'm going to say 4 to 10 off or something. It looked like there was a sweet spot somewhere in there.
In terms of being, in the run where you came from, it didn't really matter, did it? It played pretty fairly, back or.
Might have been a touch dip, like obviously it's still a pretty testing track. Just off speed, getting to the middle was probably the prime, but definitely if you had ability like Frumos and those showed, you could definitely run on.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's start off with race 1 there, the 2-year-old 1,400 metre race. Average tempo, by the time they got to the 600, probably dropped off a little bit to below average. And we saw Flag of Honour get the job done here, John.
Yeah, it was a funny race to try and do the form for, I thought, and then kind of sort of played out like I thought it would. Maybe the winner went a touch better than I expected. Few excuses. I think I thought the horse I actually liked was Albrick, and when it lobbed 1-1, I was pretty excited. When he didn't come around him on the turn, I was a bit miffed. He went back towards the inside, but I see it played both nostrils. I think like Vinny Spirit did everything.
Hang on. Oh, Affidavit bled?
Sorry, Affidavit. Sorry, I've got the wrong horse. Albrick's the one outside the leader. Pardon me. Affidavit's the one I like. The Godolphin horse in the 1-1 here. Looked to have its chance in the run and did a few things funny, but it makes sense when you see that it's bled. Couldn't find excuses for anything really in the race. The winners come from back and wide and circled them, and I think every horse has pretty much shown its hand. I think Vinny Spirit's just limited, got a bit of speed, kicks. Affidavit's a better horse than him, but couldn't hold off the winner and couldn't find any excuses. I thought Renaissance Girl was okay, and the sneaky horse was this thing back here. Is it called Diaco, who basically never took part in the race and got warmed up the last 200. That was it.
Yeah. Look, the winner's gone okay, and it showed decent sort of turn of foot late over that last 400 and 200. There is a question about this horse later on, which we will cover.
We may as well. Do you want to cover it now because it's while we're looking at it?
Well, may as well. I mean, it was about whether or not the horse was a Derby horse for the spring, and I'm saying no, I don't think so.
Well, it doesn't charge through the line like a horse that looks like it wants a mile and a half at this stage, does it? It kind of looks like it's absolutely cast. So, yeah, you definitely want to see more, don't you? Probably is the answer at this stage.
I just think from a breeding perspective too, I couldn't see any evidence there that would suggest it. And yes, whilst the sectionals were decent late, the overall time was poor. It was first use of track and only just got the job done and beat Albrick, the horse we spoke about, who came out of just a fair maiden at Canterbury. Look, it's only had 2 starts, and it can probably, yeah, I think so. I think they're just Saturday horses.
Yeah, so. And most of them are not probably. Like I'd say, Vinny is like a rubber stamp midweeker, and he was close enough to favourite Albrick just a Saturday. I think be very wary of throwing around high class ambitions at this stage.
Yeah, at this stage. So no for me. So we got that one out of the way. Okay, so let's get on to race 2, the highway over 6 furlong. Tempo here is above average.
Can I commentate this race?
600. Yes, I believe you might have had an interest here, John.
I did. The funny part is I didn't. If I played the preview, you would laugh. Like, I don't know if you probably do get it, but man, like I felt like Nostradamus here. I don't want to play it because I'll probably get sent to someone who'll take it the wrong way and think that I'm being abusive. But I just was very concerned about. I just don't think this fella should be riding in town. I think he nearly caused a fall on this same horse last start, and I thought it was, probably an even money chance with the jockey here. But what he does is basically the whole race. It's a bit of a nothing race anyway, but to miss the kick, drive this horse through. Sir Ravenelli's the horse we're talking about. Obviously, look at the horse. He can hardly control it. It's so keen the whole way. Can't like when that horse comes up outside him, even fires it up more. The time-wise, what are we saying? Like he's gone quick to the 800, then quick into the 600, and then they've come home in a putrid last 600, and this horse obviously should have won. And then he's blamed the advertisement boards for the horse's waywardness in the straight, but I just literally think the jockey can't steer. Should have won. I don't think you've got much to add to the race. There's not much. There's just the winner's won by act of God, but
lost a plate. I mean, is that an excuse? The horse wanted to sort of.
Well, it had an inside bubble cheeker on, so they expected it to be a little bit wayward. But I'm saying it's the jockey, not the horse.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a highway, John, and there's no doubt that he's one of probably the two worst jockeys in the race.
Well, he's probably one of the two worst jockeys on the planet, so that would make him one of the two worst jockeys in the race. Mate, obviously loyalty is a huge part of racing, and these guys are doing their best to stick loyal with Jeff, but it's a shame. They've probably cost themselves 2 highways this prep, and I just don't think he should be riding. But that's just my opinion, and it's only from a safety perspective. I couldn't care less about like the money wise, and I said I didn't have a bet in the race. I just think he's dangerous. From a race perspective, as the winner was second up, did a good job, but won by act of God. A lot of the horses were sort of up and back in distance. I think this form will hold up okay for an off-season highway sort of racing, but it's a pretty average race overall, right? Like the last section was really bad.
Yeah, look, there's not much to say there in terms of the quality of this race. The last 400 was 8.1 below, and we're talking leader winner now and 4.5 below the last 200. So below standard for sure, this highway. Yeah,
and all these horses were not doing a lot, even though it looked like they were kind of closing. It's definitely this poor bugger that's just tying up and crabbing off the track. I don't think it's advertisement boards. It might be sore or might have issues or might have just been genuinely cast after being set such a tough task. Next race.
Okay, the 3-year-old race over 6 furlongs. They've gone below average tempo here, and we saw Pretty Wild get the job done with Pizarro making a veil attempt late, and they sort of cleared out from the rest of them. What do you have to say about this race, John? Overall time was nothing flash. In terms of the 3 400 metre races though it was the actual fastest time of the 3. And it went probably 3.7 lengths slower than Noble Soldier did to in that race.
And I don't think it was an exciting race either, right? Like as in Noble Soldier to line it up with, it looks like it was a pretty low quality event too.
Look, the top two are progressive enough in terms of the weaker grade races, and in the lower grade benchmark races, I can't be too critical of them, but nothing that flash for me.
I think you're spot on. I think it's not a Saturday race. It's very similar to the first. It might just be Saturday horses. Definitely can't knock the winner, who's 3 starts into its life and put in 3 good performances. For Kathy's sort of, if Jane McDonald was on this horse, it probably starts even money in this race on Saturday. And, she did a good job. She did nothing wrong on it. Absolutely not. Pizarro chases hard. Just a horse. Third horse is not a bad horse either. Probably back to Wednesday grade. Could certainly be competitive straight away. It's a bit of a weird one. Like you say, it's not a high-class race, but can't knock the horses. Definitely Dehorn Unicorn. That was a bit of a lawnmower run. Looks like it's all those last couple of runs have caught up with it. It looks cactus. But the first 3 across the line, I don't mind this horse either, Smashing Eagle. It just looked like it peaked on its run there. I don't think it's a horse that wants to sort of sit back and make a long run. I think it's a horse that needs to draw a gate, sit 3rd, 4th, and ping and it's got that in it. I think it's got a sharp 300 metre sprint, but I don't think it's ever going to tough a race out. I think it's not about horse Smashing Eagle. I think, yeah, I agree with you. First two across the line, going well enough to be competitive in this sort of grade and have upside.
Yeah, look, Smashing Eagle lost a plate. Diamond Hands didn't stretch out at all on the track. So, yeah, maybe some excuses there.
Diamond Hands was an interesting one because I think it actually ran a decent section somewhere and then it sort of blundered. And so it's probably one horse you can be forgiving of because it may have not handled the track at all and might be going a little bit better than its form suggests. You can't imagine it's going to go around short odds anywhere next start.
No, look, it ran a good split between the 6 and the 4. So, if you want to take some note out of that, perhaps, but, maybe just needs a firmer track. Okay, race 4, which is the Midway. This Midway was a bit stronger than probably your average Midway, probably better than midweek grade.
Isn't that scary?
And closer to Saturday grade. So in terms of the types of horses that ran the lead-up form. Okay, so average tempo here, John, what do we have to say? Noble Soldier.
That's probably the most significant thing that happens in the whole race is the start air-to-air staying in the gates. It's probably the run of the race too, but to me, I know what you say. I agree. It's not about it midway, but crikey, I find it difficult to find a horse to be too positive about. They all seem to have had every possible chance here. Noble Soldier did the job first up, not going to knock it, but it's definitely needs things to go away. Barticelli, no excuses. None of them excuses. And Edaware is probably the only one with excuses, but it's a bit of a nightmare horse that's always going to be back there. And even though it's first up for a new stable, it sort of did similar things with Coil, didn't it? Like it promised to be it's just a nightmare of a creature. Look at it, travels keen and it makes a huge, long, wide run. It goes really well here, but follow it at your own risk.
What about Moralist? They're saying it didn't handle the ground, and Air of Alsace, it was playing up behind the gates when they were replating it, and it ran a poor race, so perhaps I forgive for it.
Well, Air of Alsace obviously went really good first up, didn't it? So maybe that just absolutely cooked it second up. But how do you treat those horses? Like does it need a freshen or what? I'm not sure, but certainly forgivable. And Moralist not so much for me, just because it's had a few more tries and that sort of thing. But Air of Alsace definitely has more ability than it showed there. It just says this is air to air. Nothing really did what this horse did out wide, and that scares me about the race a bit too. Yeah, I don't like this race.
Okay, let's move on to a race 5, the 1888. I think this was probably the best race of the day anyway. Interesting the way that the field spread out here, and in terms of tempo, Lord Ardmore in this race went out solid tempo. Look, there was a bit of a case of two divisions, wasn't there? And I think that perhaps flattered the winner a touch. It often makes those horses, I think, on pace, the horses to beat, despite the fact that they might be going much faster than standard. I thought in the second division, Francesco Guardi was the run of the race. Had a few things against it, but the winner, has done a good job too. It was 5 weeks off, up sharply in distance. There's
Can I drag you back and ask you? It was obviously very, very firm in the betting. Commonwealth fee was a little bit weak. Did you expect it to be like that's for those reasons that you just sort of outlined? 13 to 18, 5 weeks between runs. It obviously went very well first up, but jumping in distance, soft track. Did you expect it to be as firm as it was in betting?
Just bring out my market here. No, I didn't.
Yeah, okay. That's cool. So it's gone like a motor car, hasn't it? And I agree with you. Like sometimes those horses that set up a break, especially on wet tracks, are definitely the ones to beat. But they, like all things considered, jumping 500 metres, 5 weeks between runs, setting a fast tempo, running the time it has overall, I agree. Like it's the run of the day for me. And I think Francesco Guardi's absolutely airborne. Even the stablemate Newbury's went all right, just second up, probably knocked up a bit like I expected the winner to. But if the winner keeps on this upward path, it's going to be hard to beat in these sorts of races for the next month or so.
I thought the second favourite was a bit disappointing, come Bellafili. in this race. I would have expected it to do a bit better than that.
Yeah, and I think they've said they're going to freshen it up. I read no, it pulled up fine, but going to freshen it up. It was obviously a little crass rise for it, but it was the one with the perfect setup, wasn't it? And he thought he gave it a good ride this time. Didn't chase that fast speed too hard. So I'm not saying he rode it too close or anything. It just was disappointing. It's one of those races from a punter's perspective where I'd love him to sort of delve into the race a bit more, because the winner was extremely well backed and it was a little bit disappointing and whatever. I'm not suggesting anything untoward. The winner's dead set gone like a rocket, but the market knew it was going to happen.
Well, I think the first two have, they did scratch it twice. It missed a run off that abandoned meeting on the 2nd of July, and then it was scratched at Grafton out of that race. There's been plenty of discussion about that. Both times jockeys were booked, and I suppose maybe the wide gates they scratched for those reasons, which is not probably too uncommon for this camp. And from that gate they were happy, and obviously it kept the work up to it.
Yeah, the first three, the first two were dead set airborne.
I think so. I think the two of them, the ones.
Good form should be anyway.
Indeed. Okay, let's get on to the 1578.
Oh.
The tempo here, another solid tempo, and the winner's gone okay. And what else do you have to say about this race? I thought Speed Legend there, towards the inside went okay. I mean, it's no world beater by any means, but it could pick up a race if it's perhaps
just no urgency at any stage on it, right? It's just riding really poorly, really lazy riding. It's just never put in the race. I guess sort of number one talking point was that Karlstad put it to the leader. Did you read I did enjoy reading the steward's report saying the kid comes off it. They question him. He said, well, I was told to be extremely aggressive. And then Waller gets interviewed and goes, no, I didn't tell him to be aggressive. And then I hear rumours that he apologised to Connections of Lease for barbecuing it later and had a laugh about it. So either way, all they did was play to the hands of the Godolphin horse, which I thought was the funniest part of the whole exercise.
Yeah, I think, how Lease continues to run around these races, these prices, a bit beyond me. But anyway.
Well, it had its chance last start, didn't I? I kind of agree with you. I didn't have it in the. I thought I marked Karlstad shorter. I thought it was probably the one that was at most detrimental, from the ride that any of them were given. What price did the winner start? It's obviously got a very good fresh record, but this was the first time sort of 1,500 on a rain affected track. You can see it's a big strong bugger. And it's
ran about 7-2, John, and the winner, and about 4-1.
So well backed
before com. Reasonably well fancied. Yeah.
Considering first up and 1,500, I know it did have a good record, but it's gone really well. Pace assisted somewhat, but still a good performance first up.
Indeed, head of state. Got a trial before it races again. Would I say what? Sorry.
I think it's obviously I don't know where it gets to this prep, but obviously a classy win, and I agree with you that this horse just nearly a barrier trial. Speed Legend, was
it? Barrier trial, yeah, certainly.
Well, I treat it that way. You know what I'm saying? I treat it. I treat it as a good barrier trial.
Look, I think I can do better than that for sure. Back at a race at midweek at the Kenzo, or if they were to run when's our next Saturday Kenzo meeting? We're going to have one of those soon.
Oh God, please don't say that. It is a funny time of year, isn't it, when you're sort of balancing horses that are, when the good horses start coming back, they start eliminating a few of these benchmark 70-ish races that they end up back in midweek grade, where the horse like Alcyon or whatever probably goes up in grade, similar to the last Lord Ardmore. You're looking at horses getting beaten 5 that are going to go back to Wednesday. It's actually good because it gives you plenty of angles rather than sort of dismissing a few horses, because a lot of them do go back in grade pretty quickly.
Okay, let's get on to race 7 here. Average pace here for the 1,400 metre race. And I thought there was a couple of runs worth talking about here. I thought Blessed did a fair job back on the inside, and Too Much to Bear was obviously given an impossible task on where it was, but really motored late and ran the slickest section ratings of the day from the 800 home. It's obviously in for a good prep based on that. Few disappointments in the race, perhaps. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Just while it gets like you can't say that he doesn't like this horse put in an enormous performance first up last time too much to be. You can see he's like tailed off there, and does hit the line really well. A few scary like Silent Agenda scares me. I'm not big rap on it and the race that it's run, but like you say, I think these horses up on speed definitely had a bit of an advantage on Saturday. The winner was first up in Australia. Good job, Blesk. Bit of a nightmare of a creature to follow, but honest and too much to bear. The only horse that was a little bit disappointing was probably Yee Yee, and the betting kind of suggested that would be the case too. Yeah, I think this is just a progressive race for most of these horses, right? Like a stepping stone.
Oh, I say Irish Legend failed to handle the ground, and Silent Agenda lost a plate. So there's only 2 runs here for the Irish Legend, so I wouldn't be too dismissive of that.
Yeah, it was good the other day. I think it must have had a few little niggles, that horse. I think it's got more to show, probably, hopefully.
Firmer track. Needs a firmer track.
I think that's the key to a number of runners at the moment, that we're sort of parking. They're just biding their time, waiting for a firmer going. But yeah, I think, and it's a bad word, but I think this is a bit of a barrier trial race for all of them, including the winner. There's a few horses there that'll progress to better races for sure.
Yeah, I suppose too much to bear is the obvious, isn't it? The follow.
Yeah.
Out of that race.
Yeah. It's just a funny horse. I don't know what it is, because these horses that race so well fresh over these distances, and I know it still wasn't the same horse when it stepped up in trip last time, was it? Like, it still raced well, but it doesn't show that like attacking turn of foot once it gets up. It can settle a bit closer. It's just I'm just not sure what that horse is. You know what I mean? It could be a really good 1,400 meter horse or 1,600 meter horse, or I'm not sure what it is. Well,
I mean, it rated on my figures. It rated down third up last prep when it got over 2,000 meters, but it was a very different structure of race to what it faced first up when it won over 1,400 meters. So, and it did a similar thing that day too. It ran the best sectionals of the day from the 800 home in terms of sectional ratings anyway. So it's a each split. So it does go well fresh, but it's at least indicative that I think the horse is in for a good prep. And it was a slow track Saturday, and it perhaps does better than that on say, a dead track.
Agree. I just, it's just weird lining those horses up that race so well fresh. And then they sort of step them up naturally, and whether that's actually helping them or not. But definitely, like you say, all you can say is it's tick the I've come back well box.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, race 8, the 1878. And here they went above average clip, and not much in the form here, I don't think. Just looking at it, Caesar's Palace got away with it. Went as good as it can go.
I underestimated the winner, and this is just an absolute nothing race. I probably fell into Phillipsburg a bit. I thought by default we just had a bit of a fitness edge on them, and was praying, which was never really going to happen, that it would settle a bit closer and be closer. But it was like as in on the turn, but just sort of set too big a task. I don't think there's anything out of this race. I think they're take turns horses that Caesar's Palace just got the right run. And
what do we say about Love the Invasion? It was very disappointing, I thought.
I think there was some stuff in the stewards report, wasn't it? I think it pulled up okay, but just disappointing, and they're going to have a look at its prep. Yeah, I thought it was entitled to fight on, and certainly the pattern was in its favour. It definitely had its chance. You can see that it sort of sweated up noticeably there, which is interesting for a horse that's so deep into its prep. Maybe it's just had enough. It's a bit of a funny character to follow. Like when it feels like it fights on. When it doesn't, it just gives up. So I don't know what to do with that horse.
But I mean, it also came off a run at Warwick Farm last prep on a much firmer track when it was, I suppose not expected to really do much, but it came off a bad run to then win next time out, didn't it? It won at Newcastle, admittedly in an easier race. But do you just sort of call it quits for the prep?
Well, you'd be surprised. Like off that, they just sat up. Like it's just caved in, hasn't it? You'd nearly be surprised if it didn't go for a break or at least a freshen. Yeah, and it was in its career best form up until then, but it has sort of been up through that tough period. Maybe it's just I think there's a few horses that that hit the wall on Saturday. Just had enough of winter, maybe looking for a paddock to lie down in for a few weeks.
Okay, let's talk about race 9, the 78.7 furlong, above average tempo early to the 800. By the time they got to the 600, probably averaged out, and plenty of spruik around the winner, Frumos, who I see as an improving type for sure, but perhaps not as in love with it as what the market might be.
It was extraordinarily well placed, wasn't it? Apart from its racing pattern and that kind of thing, like it was a very steady race. And even after that, there were a couple of horses that have probably got excuses here. Like I find myself when doing the form that bloody, don't forget Monica coming out of a highway was probably one of the scarier or main dangers to it. So that's a pretty scary thing. It's hard to knock the winner, isn't it? But
yeah, I'm not mocking it. I'm just saying.
No. I'm with you. I'm reserving. But I think it's a very nice horse. But this wasn't a standout performance of like if someone asked, is this going to win the bloody Coolmore? Very similar to that horse in race 1, isn't it? Like, I want to see more.
Yeah, I think it's a much better horse than that. But
yes.
Yeah, coming into this race, I suppose an indicative assessment of what I thought of the field in terms of their lead-up form was that this thing came out on my automatics at 4 to 6. And yes, it did start sort of 5 to 4, but it just goes to show you there wasn't much in the race, right?
From a pure video watcher's performance, this is a very bad thing. A length and a half between every runner in the race, not coming around a horse, slicing through the middle and going past the whole field inside, a length and a half. The section wasn't horrific. Wasn't bad, actually, but it wasn't terrible, but certainly not as if they're speeding up and it's gone past them all. I'm saying these horses are probably in the worst part of the track. Maybe this guy's all right, but I think it only just runs 1,400. It's one running away. It's done. You can't knock the winner, but it's just a pass.
Yeah, look, promising horse, but yeah, I don't think it's a star at this stage. Okay, race 9. No, that was race 9. Race 10, the last race. We've got the 1,100 metre race, below average tempo. Nothing to talk about in terms of time. Bit ordinary. Plenty to talk about, I suppose, with shades of rose in this race, John.
I got in a Twitter war without even knowing it. I just posted a thing, people would be angry because it was the last race of the day, and it was like, what was the winner? It was like $4 to evens or something. Early betting, I'm talking. I don't know about deductions and everything, but it was even then. It was what, $2.70 to evens or something. Race day, so most of the people would have been hanging their hat on this as a result. And I wasn't even having a crack at Rachel King. Like, I just sort of set a task. It was set a task for mine. It wasn't all her fault. The horse is a bit quirky, but you don't see many horses make a 1,000-metre run, shoot 3 in front, get run down. But the times kind of explain it, don't they? Like, she couldn't hold it any slower because they're not going quick up front. Time overall was horrible. She's obviously just got tired the last 50, and the Big Easy, who I think you found as a horse to follow from its last run at Rosehill there, sort of just picked up the pieces. It was a bit of an act of God win. I hope you were on it.
Not unhappy with the result.
Yeah, and it was the only thing I thought of when I saw that. I thought everyone's going to be dirty, but maybe Paul will be happy. Yeah, it's just a perfect ride, wasn't it, the Big Easy? And I don't think it's in the same class as Shades of Rose. If it does everything right on its day, I think it's a pretty good horse. But
Al Bellagio misses for an excuse there. It was lame, 2 out of 5.
Yeah.
So,
it's a bit like Lease, that horse, isn't it? Like I think everyone's lame who backs at most starts.
I think most people would have expected us to do a bit better than that, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it was, and similar to the previous race, like this guy had come out of a Wednesday race where it was sort of pretty much handed the event. There wasn't much in this race. Shades of Rose probably stood out from a upside perspective in the race. The Big Easy, as you sort of said, came off a nice run last start and got the job done. I think this is the only horse to follow if it puts its mind on the job going forward.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about the race, but not much in it for me.
The race was bad. There was only one good run, and it's a horse that now has bucked its previous start and now missed the start this time, so it's obviously got a few head noise issues. You'd expect them to try and fire it out, wouldn't you, next time? Like they'll whack blinkers on it or do something to try and get it back up on speed.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps.
It'll be interesting to see what it does next time.
Okay, horses to follow.
Holy heck. You go first.
For me, race 5, I like both the first two, Lord Ardmore and Francesco Guardi. I think they're the two to follow for sure. In the race 7, it's borderline this one, but I think Bless can run a better race if it gets the right setup. That's about it for me. But particularly Lord Ardmore and Francesco Guardi, those two.
I agree with you. They're just like head and shoulders above the rest. Like not talking about horses like Frumos and that, they're coming out of questionable races, but they, like Lord Ardmore's win was like dominant, and the second horse is airborne and eligible for probably easier races, which makes it very easy to place. Jeepers creepers, trying to find something else. I think Jeff Keogh's probably one to follow wherever he goes. Whatever he rides, just keep betting. They say that yesterday he rode one, and I haven't seen it because I'm too scared to look at Grafton, one early in the program that made Sir Ravanelli look like the ride of the day. So if anyone wants to be bothered going and looking at Grafton and looking up Jeff Keogh's rides there, it's really good. I'm with you. I just, that those two horses I'm going to play sit on the fence this week, because I think a lot of these horses are going to go up and back in grade, and it's more about placement, whereas those two should be competitive wherever they go.
Okay, let's get on to the questions of the week. We won't actually talk about the question of the week yet, but certainly the questions. And of course, the segment's brought to you by TopSport, who, if you don't have an account, punters, you should. Very fair in their approach and consultative to their customers, I think. And look, no one's perfect, but they do a great job. And
I just want to have another go into bat for him. I talked about you before. I just can't find anything bad to say about Tristan, and no one really knows what he's doing for the industry, as in trying to go out there and bat. Obviously, just, self-interest is involved, everyone, but he understands that sustainability in the industry is very important, and he's one of the few that's out there proactively trying to combat these taxes which are handcuffing everyone. Shout out to Tristan.
Indeed. Okay, first question this week is from James. G'day guys, I've started to bet in the run, albeit lately on track, and I've been noticing how many things are beaten at $1.20 and less. I have no data on this, but it's just an observation. It might just be happening more often of late. But is there any merit of putting on a lay in something you back pre-jump, aka you back something at $3 pre-jump and put in a lay of $1.20 or below to be matched in play, or to lay off any part of your stake? Do you guys ever do it, and is there any merit in it? Maybe only a mental health saver. Cheers, guys. Loving the show. If you got $3 a horse and it's $1.20 and run at any stage, why do you want to give back any part of your position? Unless you are an in-play trader.
Take it, they obviously believe it's value, right?
Yeah,
if someone's taking you $1.20, they're not taking it because they think it should be $3, are they? So, yeah, I would say from a logic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to just auto do that every time, because there'll be a lot of times where $1.20 is monstrous value that you're handing away. Yeah, and there may well be a lot of these things getting beaten, but there's lots of them that win, and I suppose you've got to balance it, haven't you, in terms of the data. Look, if you're an in-play punter and that's what you do, your go is to back things that you expect to lead, say, pre-race that are in the market, and you take $3 with the view to trading back, and that's what you do each and every time, then, okay, keep doing it, knock yourself out. But, from my point of view, if you generally back something at $3 and it's not part of your go-to strategy to do, why give any part of it back at $1.20? Look, personally, I don't do it. I have occasionally laid horses back in run, for sure. Sometimes, it goes against me, but it's not something I would normally do. So I suppose if you do it all the time, sure. If you don't, I don't think I'd be doing it. I don't think either of us play in that space too much, but I'm more likely to be sort of, say, a horse like Shades of Rose is probably a good example for me to be betting in run. Like if you'd had a jumped on Saturday, you're happy to take $2 or whatever it is if it sort of jumped and found the front, whereas as soon as they went 20 metres, you just wanted to cast the race. So I don't lay things very often in the run. It's probably not a good question for me, but yeah, I don't understand it from a logic point.
Okay, Les has asked a question. Do you think Australia will adopt the same use of whip rules as the UK have just introduced? Would it impact the way you bet dramatically? Well, I'm sure everyone's read plenty about that over the last week. I think the whip rules are ludicrous to begin with. Look, we went from a lever whip to a padded whip. The motive seemed to be because it didn't hurt the horse to go to a padded whip. I've also seen demonstration videos where a jockey, it was a UK-based jockey, I think, I can't remember who it was in some sort of a seminar or talk where he actually, suggested that they could hit him with the whip to see whether it hurt, and I don't think it does. It is a safety issue. I think jockeys should have whips. I don't think they should ever be banned. And will Australia go down this path of, what seems to be an inevitable banning of the whip? Probably. Let's need to fuck everything else up.
Well, it's a fine line, isn't it? Animal safety and human safety, but
I'm all for animals.
I'm all for animal
safety. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it just seems to be one thing after another. Jumps racing and this.
Well, jumps racing it's gone, isn't it? In South Australia, gone.
Yeah.
Never to come back.
Yeah.
And if you take the whip away, it's never to come back. These aren't things that are negotiable. You know what I mean? Like, they don't give back. So I think you should argue to not do this to the nth of your life. And if they somehow beat you, they beat you. But all these things should be fought hard. For mine.
Well, it's a safety issue. I mean, I can understand moving from a lever whip to the padded whip. I get.
Yes.
I get that horses' welfare and cruelty to animals and all those sorts of things are critically important. But from what I understand, everybody says it doesn't hurt a horse. Why is it even being talked about?
Yeah, and if you have to tighten up the rules,
instead of stewards, counting whip strokes and spending all their time focusing on that, how about they focus more on getting some of these issues resolved post-race? Their inquiries and so forth more swiftly for the benefit of all. Even
more, I had a interesting. Actually, I forgot to say it. I was nearly going to pineapple of the week. The last race where was it? How am I gone? I'm gone. The last race at Scone, was it? Anyway, I should be more prepared. But a horse come from behind the winner, bumped it, come under its neck, bumped it, put about 3 lengths on it. The horse at its bumps picked itself back up, run it to a short half head, like might have been even closer. No, nothing, no protest, nothing in the stewards report at all. Those sorts of things, I agree. They're far more, beneficial to punters going forward. It just felt like it was last race of the day. They said, knock off time, let's go. And just that sort of approach seems to happen a lot with racing. That things that are bread and butter, you and I watching a replay go, okay, I'm going to interrogate the stewards report to see what happened here, and there's nothing there, is far more important than insert name here, jockey hitting one 6 times instead of 5 to the turn. I agree with that.
Well, why count them? It's a pointless exercise. I mean, they're never going to take a race off someone. But they've never done it so far. It's always the same shit that you read in every stewards report, right? The stewards couldn't be convinced that the horse gained an advantage. Fair enough. If that's your position and you're not going to take races off them, then why are you worrying about how many times they hit the bloody horse?
And the only time they do punish them is a perception thing. Big races, big race day, National Willow, where they absolutely hammer them just to try and keep up the perception that they're controlling it all year round when they're really not.
If it's really excessive, I don't think you need to count the strokes. I think it stands out, right?
Well, it's normally the action and like you say, the aggression side of it more than how many times the horse hit. Some need to be, I'm not saying bashed, but they need to be sort of clicked up at a certain point of race. Horses that have flat spots, things like that, they're not all the same, like you can't drive them all. They're not like a car. You can't bloody press the accelerator and expect the same response from every single horse.
I could say it's like kids, but we would not go there.
Far out.
Well, I mean, I'm sure many of us, like myself, and
I feel like my wife might say it's not just kids that need a whip every now and then, and definitely not in a kinky fashion.
No, I don't mean that. I just meant in terms of just standing over the horse or disciplining the horse. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's often a safety issue. A lot of horses need it. They're lazy. I just think it's too political.
Yep.
Anyway,
Flag
let's move on.
covered.
Juzzy's got a question here. Hi guys, is there an angle or suggestions to help work through these early Saturday races at the moment? I do 95% of my betting in the last 90 seconds before the jump, and the tote pools mainly as fixed also are now completely cooked with any horse in the market with all the bonus back race promos that the 36 new corporates are running. Hard to get a good read with no consistency across the board. Thanks, Juzzy. John, you want to start with this? I'm trying to work out what he's actually asking.
I think he's kind of just saying, is there any point to early betting at all? Now, I think it's kind of saying that it's all everything so fluctuates heavily in the market with all the bonus back promos. I think he's saying that a lot of people. Oh, okay. So I think what he's saying is that all money's being sucked out of tote pools completely. I think I looked at a race yesterday. It might have been the first race in Sydney, and I think there was 1,500 in the. This is not on a Saturday, but there was 1,500 in the tote pool Unitab, and there was like 2 to load. So I'm in agreement that all the money's being sucked out of the tote. Tote's basically irrelevant, and nearly fixed odds markets are completely irrelevant. I think what he's trying to say is that all the recreational money's out of the tote pools now, which most people are aware of. It's all been getting sucked to the corporates with these bonuses that is attracting them away from that. Fine, and that it's impossible to bet until the last 90 seconds. That's probably aggressive. It's probably the last 5 minutes though, and I agree. I'd say I've probably 90% of my betting's done in that period now too.
Yep.
Not 90 seconds,
Agreed.
but 5 minutes.
No, yeah, certainly in the last 5 minutes or so, or definitely within the time frame of where bookmakers used to go up, 15, 20 minutes before the race. Look, if you can get on early and you've got the capacity and you've got the accounts and the bowlers and the wherewithal to do it, and you can organise your game to be able to do it, sure, there's some fantastic prices that they bet early and big mistakes that they make because most of them aren't doing the form. It's just copycat, isn't it?
Yep.
So, but, for those that aren't in that position, like most of us, we've spoken about this at Lib before, and it's, in our minds, you're much better off having a market that opens and matures much later than you are having markets sit there 3 days and then having to wait till Saturday to get something on and being restricted and what you can and can't bet. And
you got a handful of smart punters that are ready for these early markets, shaping the market. For the corporates. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
but I think it also it's apart from market percentage at the moment being a bit tough. The market's being really volatile. Also, is creating opportunities late in betting as well. So if you're ready for it and set up for it, I think there are opportunities as well due to these sort of volatility in the market late.
Fair enough. Okay, King of the North. Is there a view on where it's easier to win an edge in betting at metro, provincial, or country? John, you go first here because you do a lot more about wild.
I think there is a bit. I think it's easier to win country provincial, as in if you had applied your specialty area to one or the other, you certainly find it easier to win country provincial because I think someone's always said to me, like say in a metropolitan meeting, there might be 10,000 sets of eyes watch replays. This is just a number I've pulled out of my head, by the way, and like concentrate on it. They love doing the form for it. The market's certainly far better tuned. Whereas country and provincial, there may be, 1,000 sets of eyes casting themselves over those races. And I think it does present better opportunities if you're specialising in them as opposed to, if you've got to choose metro or country provincial and you're a specialist, I'll be choosing country provincial from an edge perspective.
Especially if you're happy to or content with betting less.
Yep.
And turnover isn't an issue for you. I think you're right.
I'd say it's like an aggressive in that perspective. You know what I mean? If you're going to specialise in an area and turn over less money, it has to be away from the city because it's just a big edge. It's a big difference.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Darcy's question. Why does it seem the difference between sitting 3 wide facing the breeze is so much harsher than sitting outside the lead facing the breeze? what is, because you're just covering more ground, right? I mean, I'm assuming we're talking about tracks where
All
they're
things
even,
equal.
and
Yeah.
all things equal, with the wider you are being a disadvantage, you're covering more ground.
Yeah, and like the old Jelko secret, I think the first thing that we got tattooed on our forehead when we went through our bloody 6 months of training or whatever the heck it was is you are never to give a negative mark to a horse that sits outside leader. Obviously, 3 wide outside leader is a bigger no-no. 4 wide, but anything that sort of is working outside the tempo is a horse that's to be left alone no matter what happens in the race. So that's a good pointer. What's that?
Or bonused in certain circumstances. Yeah.
So it's that shows that these guys have put extensive research into that position being the hardest position to race in. Overall, there's obviously sometimes where tracks play certain ways, and a horse can control the speed from that position if they've got a bit of upside over the rest of the field, that sort of thing. But it's still the hardest place to win from day in, day out.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, question from Jeff. It's for both of us. Is it too basic? Please ignore it. But it is something that puzzles me. What is your approach to each way betting? Is there a minimum price you need before backing each way? Do you level stake or back more on the place, or maybe just try to make the place better saver on your total stake? I presume it can be situational, but any comments would help. Thanks, Jeff. Look, I think I've talked about this before. For me, well, there's no each way anymore as such, true each way, quarter odds. But if I am betting the place or having a place component, it's usually when I think that the place price, what they're assessing at the place, is what I think it should be for the win. So, for example, I don't know, a 20-1 pop, right? If I was getting 20s to place, I'd be backing it for the place for sure. And would I be backing it to win? Absolutely. Would I have more on the place component? Yes. It might be 1 by 2, 1 by 3, 1 by 4, depending on what sort of horse it is, size of the field, price range, a whole lot of other factors, but definitely more to place. So yeah, that's when I'm looking to bet place. It doesn't happen that often, those scenarios, but when it does, I'm all over it. You?
Yeah, I'm similar. Like I don't bet a lot each way, but there's sort of circumstances. I'll usually back more than one runner in a race before I'll back a horse each way. But every now and then, and it can be as a sort of the place component, like you say, you can get a horse that you think they've made a huge mistake with, and it just, you said, the place price itself is just too appealing not to just take it independently and usually more aggressively than win price. That's one way. Another way may be a horse that you know is going to get a very nice running transit sort of thing, might be one danger, and it might even be sort of odds on the place, and I'm happy to have more on the place coverage if I think it's a situation where it's sort of a match racy thing, and I find it very difficult to see it missing a place. Also, place betting, I sort of, if I'm really happy with the pattern and the setup of a race, I'm happy to bet more place than if it's more of a dicey situation. So like the more questions I got answered, the more confidence I got in the race, more chance I am of messing in those domains away from, like you're saying, like obvious big mistakes.
Yeah. Well, they may not be obvious. They might be obvious to me. But
obvious to yourself.
The market doesn't agree. But I'm going, well, there's so much disagreement here that I think it's worth trying to capitalise on this. Yeah,
and it's not insurance, is it? It's just a great bet.
Well, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
all that matters,
David.
That's all that matters.
Back your opinion. Got to back yourself. Okay. At the end of the day, we've got a question here from David. What's the current winning percentage of favourites? Is it still the same as the historical 30 to 33%? How is this explained given the advances in technology and the availability of sectional times? I would have thought that markets would be more efficient. Now, I did do a quick test in Access, our database, before, and it took about a minute, but I analysed the last 12 months of racing across Australia. Well, say last 12 months, season to date, which is almost 12 months. And the strike rate of favourites across the board in Australia is around, what have we got here? About 34.2%. So a little bit ahead of where I would see favourites long term. I think the reason why it hasn't changed all that much over the years is because whilst there's advances in technology, the race is not about one horse. The race is about the field. And so there's a distribution of probabilities across the field, right? There's never going to be, oh, well, the favourite is going to win more races, therefore that's it. And just because we've got better technology and better ways of dealing with things, therefore we're going to make this horse the winner, as it were.
Every favourite would win that way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a game of probabilities, and there's a range of probabilities, and this group of horses wins 33 races out of 100 or 34, and this one wins 20, and this one wins 10, and this one wins 5. They all have their share. It's never about one group. So yeah, sure, it's about consensus. The markets are more efficient though, because the factors that they value, it's harder and harder to find areas that they don't factor right.
You got vision data, everything you can have like that we didn't have access to. Yeah, and it's a long time now. It's been in play for quite a while. It's not as if these big technological advances happen in the last couple of years. I'm sure that there's things that are improving, but it's been quite a while since. It's mainly the access to proper times and proper vision.
But I mean, there's plenty of view out there from very smart people that videos aren't that important. Now they're important, and I don't think they're saying that they're not important, but it's very well fished. So yes. It's hard to get value out of doing the tapes. It's not like you're one of a select group of people seeing it. Everyone's seeing it.
And it wasn't that long ago that wasn't the case. I remember who was the fellow? Was it Brown? Someone Graham Brown or something used to charge. I don't mean to say his name, but mate, he used to make a fortune out of it, didn't it? Like it was thousands a month just for the vision. So that's how hard it was, and now it's pretty readily available.
For memory, it was around about $1,300 a month we were paying for CDs of poor quality.
Yes, and then you had to upload them yourself into the database, which was it was worth doing, wasn't it?
Type names. Yeah, there was a period of time where it was worth doing, and before that, of course, there was the VHS tapes back in the back in the 80s and so forth.
Bones and that used to,
and 90s
someone used to go through and do every last run and put them on a VHS and then copy them and run them around Sydney. It was incredible.
Well, you buy them at the track, right? From Hoyts or Global Vision or whatever they were called back then. So, yeah, and like all things, if it's not so much the technology itself, it's what you do with it, right? So, but when it comes to doing videos, everyone's seeing pretty much the same thing. But if you can overlay data and videos, you can often pick up little hidden angles. And I think a good case in point was that Big Easy horse that we mentioned. I don't even remember me mentioning it last time. I vaguely do. But there was something in the run there. There was another one in Brisbane recently, one of the major races, Golland horse.
Yep. I remember Bowman rode it. They were very similar, backing up the inside. Just did enough, with excuses against to be worthy of following. Yep.
Yeah, there were factors there that if you can overlay, bias and sectionals and what you see on the tape, then the combination of those things can form powerful tools. Okay, let's get on to the question of the week from Jamie.
Hold the phone. TopSport.
Hold the phone. TopSport question of the week, indeed. I have a question in regard to base ratings, and that is the Don Scott's method in the winning way used the best of the last three. Is that still the best way to do things, or is there a base run these days more than just one of the last three runs? Look, I think it's such a good question because you can go down a rabbit hole here. I never thought that, well, at first I did, I suppose, because I just took it at face value. But after, some years, I never thought that just using a blanket best of last three was a good approach. It's a starting point. If you want to sort of isolate the process or break it down into chunks and you want to go, well, start off by showing me the best of the last three, you can. Where I think it doesn't work is there's lots of different examples, but let's do a very elegant scenario. Comes out, wins the Melbourne Cup over 2 miles, career best run, God knows how it did it. But it's now resuming in a 1400 metre race. Well, best of last three means you're going to take that Melbourne Cup run.
And it's going to win by 27 lengths if you take that run.
Or is that the run to take when resuming in a moderately run, slightly run 1400 metre race?
Likely, yeah.
Well, unlikely, right? that you're going to choose that run.
Yeah.
If the best of the last 3 runs is over 900 metres or 1,000 metres, and today's an 1,100-1,200 metre race, are you going to take that 1,000 metre form and bring it into a 1,200 metre race? Probably not. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule, right? Number of starts, how lightly raced they are, what it might do sectionally, whether it was suited or not, whether it needs a longer trip. But there is so much emphasis placed on the last start by the market. But last start is also contextual because it might have been in a race that didn't suit it, right? It might have been totally outclassed, might have been over a totally unsuitable distance. It might have been when the horse wasn't fit. It might be when the track bias is against it or the patterns against it. It might be a whole range of things. And you can't just say, oh, well, last start is the one I'm going to go to first. So if you can't, you choose necessarily by default last 3 and you can't use the last, and what do you use? Well, for me, I suppose I really try to delve in, and I'm sure this is the way most good form analysts work, is that they try and look at the pattern in context. And they say, well, okay, what does this horse need? What is it like? What's likely to suit it? What are the conditions? What's the map going to look like? That's one of the most important questions, I think, first. And is it likely to suit my horse or not? Stage of preparation is obviously a critical thing. Distance, days between runs. The list goes on and on and on. So as a starting point, by all means, use the last 3. And I think that's all what Don ever meant was, you've got to have a starting point. Selecting the base run rating is an important piece of the puzzle. It could be a rating from 10 runs ago. The
relevancy is like writing something like he's written. It's obviously a starting point, and then trying to determine the relevancy of those 3 runs and that run itself is obviously a big part of
it. There's so many situations where I think I've had great wins off getting well away from the last 3 runs. But yeah, look, generally, I think, Jamie, that recent form is your best reference.
So, I was just actually looking at a weird one. So, Lowered Ardmore from Saturday.
Yep.
Its last 3 runs obviously were first up over 1,300 unsuitable. Then you're going back into its last prep. Pretty much, you don't worry about them. If you use the last run, you can use it to sort of go back and look at what it did possibly early last prep. So its first up figure was much better than its first up figure last time. You've got the hindsight of how well it's gone on Saturday, but you could probably say that horse has either come back better and then its setup was a little bit different. If you put that together, that's the last run was relevant, but it's relevant to its sort of how it's going, not how you expect it to perform. It's all.
Well, look,
like you say, it's a rabbit hole question, isn't it?
On Saturday, it's gone to a new peak for me.
Yeah.
It's only had 2 preparations here.
Yep.
Doesn't it really? So, and it's still fairly, lightly raced in that context. It's had 17, 18 starts or something. You're right. Do you use that first up run and give it improvement? Well, obviously that first up run this prep for me was a lot better than its first 2 runs last prep.
Yeah. So, and it went 13 to 18 this time instead of 14 to 16 to 19. So it was kind of missing that middle run. But you got a better figure first up. So if you sort of treated it as second up 19, I can see where the market was coming from a little bit more than I did on Saturday.
So there'd be a case of perhaps going back to its best run last prep, saying that this horse is acclimatised, it's a second preparation, it's produced a better first up run, it wasn't suited at the distance, it's going to be better suited here. All of those things, there was an argument to say, well, you could give it that run and maybe come off it a bit, penalise it for the fact that it's 5 weeks off or whatever, or at least give it its first up run and give it significant improvement, because it would improve. It's pretty obvious that it was likely to improve. Maybe not as sure as what the market had it, but still.
And I sort of was looking at it. The La Bella Fee had a little bit better number last start, and that it had the fitness and set up to beat Lord Ardmore on Saturday, but I can see how I was wrong in hindsight. Just by
Lord Ardmore runs to its best figure last
better prep. Than it beats Com Bella Fee every day of the week.
And Com Bella Fee, wouldn't say every day of the week, but you can see why the market had its favourite.
If it runs to that figure, like Com Bella Fee had to find another 3 or 4 lengths off a peakish run last start to compete up with it, didn't it? Like it was a significant advantage that Lord Ardmore has at their best and their best.
So, I mean, I suppose what I'm saying, Jamie, is there's no best way. You've got to look at everything in the context. And I suppose a good way to do it is to say to yourself, well, what has the horse been doing recently? Has it been suited in those races? Is it likely to get conditions? Are the conditions of today's race based on your guesstimate of what the conditions will be on the day, the way the track will play, the way the map's set up, all those things? Is it likely to improve towards that best number that it can do? I certainly wouldn't go back too far. Like, I mean, I'd caution you about going back any more than 12 months.
Especially like 2-year-old, 3-year-old, right? Like going back into 2-year-old form or back into 3-year-old form.
Dangerous.
Is very scary.
Well, so many of them don't make age improvement or what's expected of them or what they should under the scale. So, that's very dangerous. And they're great opportunities too to find early in preparations when they're coming back as, say, 3-year-olds. If you can find that 2-year-old that maybe has a bit of spruik about it off its 2-year-old form and it clearly hasn't made the age improvement. You can, and you often only get one crack at that to take real advantage of it, and that is either by opposing it or going around it. We're probably going around in circles a bit, but did you have any comments?
That was the beauty of the question, though, wasn't it? Like that's where it leads you to something you could talk about for hours and hours, every sort of situation. But yeah, like you say, there's a narrative for every race. If you can back it up, each and every race, your narrative and put some guts behind it with vision and what's happened and what's going to happen today. That's kind of the game, isn't it? And trying to find the edge.
And look, you can use tools like ours to narrow that process or speed up the process by saying, sure, by all means, give me the best of the last 2 or 3, or as long as it's been within this time frame, or you could put other conditions around it as well if you really wanted to. But then you're starting to backfit and filter out too much. But you'd still need to go back and then have a look at what the computer's done based on what you've instructed it to do, and whether that's a reasonable assessment or assumption for that horse today, and what adjustments you need to make to that to counterbalance the argument of the fors and against. Because that's really all it is you're starting off with a number and you're saying, now I'm going to apply some fors and againsts, and I'm going to come up with a set of numbers at the end of that, which are reflective of what I think the distribution of chances looks like. And then my pricing algorithm is going to put a market around that.
And you hoping that you're doing it better than the market over time, and that's the difference.
Yeah.
Because otherwise everyone comes up with the same figure.
Well, David Walsh would say that you can't not include the public in the model. Their premise is to start with the permutation type model based on the assumption that the market's correct, and then look for inefficiencies around where the areas where they may not be doing it so well.
Yeah.
But if you just had to rely on that and you weren't getting any rebates, I think it'd be difficult to win.
You'd be, especially nowadays, holy heck.
If you're doing it that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to have an opinion.
I think so. Okay, great question, Jamie. Thanks to everyone tuning in and listening again this week. We'll be back next week.
Are we on Thursday or what? What's happening?
I haven't had a chance to have a look, John.
I keep checking my email for this vote that's coming. Where's this vote? I'm going to get there. I haven't voted for 20 years.
I'm enjoying the slightly less workload.
You imagine what Az is going to be like, mate. He's like a caged lion. He's going to be that pumped up to go when you release him again. Holy heck.
Well, we've got Royal Gosford. We've got Gosford Saturday. We've got the Gosford and Randwick on Saturday. And what have we got? We've got the Challenge Stakes, the listed race there at Randwick, and the July Sprint. And
we must be only a week off. I think we're one more week before.
We might be a week or two off, are we?
Yeah. Following Saturday, whoa, nothing. What? There's got to be racing somewhere. We've got a Missile Stakes in 6th of August. Is a Group 2, but I don't know. Maybe in Melbourne next week. I'm going to dig something up. I'm going to ring up RBL and ask him to pump a race up.
I think we've got there's the Ori Star, I think, on the 6th, and
so we're definitely back for that week.
There's a couple of Group 3s. We're definitely back for that, and then there's the PV Lawrence, I think, the week after, and
I'll start sparking Hazard up.
Sorry.
I'll start sparking Hazard up so he's ready to go.
Indeed, getting wound up. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next week.
Have a good week. Cheers, guys.